When people hear the word Spartan, most imagine fearless warriors in red cloaks, holding bronze shields, standing shoulder to shoulder against impossible odds. The legend of the 300 Spartans at Thermopylae is carved deep into popular culture. Movies, books, and even video games have shown them as ruthless, fearless, and almost superhuman fighters who lived only for war. But like many great stories from history, the truth about the Spartans is far more complicated than the myth. What if I told you that most of what you know about Sparta comes from enemies who wanted to glorify their own victories, or authors who loved turning reality into legend? Let us break down the 5 biggest things history got wrong about the Spartans. You might be surprised at how much more fascinating the real story is. The myth of perfect warriors. The biggest myth that surrounds the Spartans is that they were the most unbeatable warriors the world had ever seen. From a young age, Spartan boys entered the agoge, a brutal training system designed to harden them into soldiers. They were taught to fight, survive with little food, and endure harsh punishments. That much is true. However, the idea that Spartans were invincible on the battlefield is a complete exaggeration. In fact, Spartans lost battles. They even surrendered in wars, like during the Battle of Sphacteria in the Peloponnesian War, where over 100 Spartans were captured by the Athenians. This shocked the entire Greek world because it shattered the belief that Spartans would rather die than give up. The reason this myth stuck is because the Spartans were good at using their strict discipline and formation fighting. The phalanx was a formation that relied on unity and teamwork, not individual heroics, but Spartans were human. They got scared, they made mistakes, they sometimes ran from battle. The legend of their invincibility came mostly from later writers and historians who admired them, or wanted to make their enemies look stronger by comparison. So while Spartans were tough, they were not superhuman. Here is something interesting. Real strength is not just about winning every battle, but knowing when to fight and when to live to fight another day. The Spartans understood this far better than most people give them credit for. The real role of women in Sparta. One of the strangest and most overlooked facts about Sparta is the role of women in their society. In most of ancient Greece, women were expected to stay quiet, manage the home, and live in the background of political and social life. But in Sparta, women had rights and freedoms that shocked the rest of Greece. Spartan women could own land, inherit property, and even control wealth. They received physical training just like men, though not for war, but because Spartans believed strong women would give birth to strong children. This was not because Sparta was a land of early feminism. It was mainly practical. Spartan men spent most of their lives in military camps, so women had to manage estates, oversee farming, and handle the economic affairs of the family. Because of this, Spartan women became known for their confidence and independence. They spoke their minds and were respected in society, something almost unheard of in other Greek states. Imagine this: in a world where women had no voice, Spartan women ran households and managed wealth like business leaders. They were powerful in ways history rarely talks about. It shows that even in a warrior society, power took many forms, and the silent strength of Spartan women helped hold the entire system together. The dark truth about the Helots. The Spartans are often remembered for their military bravery, but few speak of the harsh reality that allowed Sparta to survive as a society. This reality centered on the Helots, a massive population of enslaved people forced to work the land so Spartans could focus on war. The Helots were native people of the region Sparta conquered, especially from Messenia. They outnumbered Spartans by as much as 7-1. Without the constant labor of the Helots, the Spartan way of life would have collapsed. The relationship between Spartans and Helots was brutal. Spartans ruled through terror. Every year, young Spartan men were sent on secret missions to murder Helots considered rebellious or dangerous. This practice was called the Cryptia, and it kept the Helots in a constant state of fear. The Spartans might have been great warriors, but they were also ruthless oppressors who maintained their dominance through violence. And here is a disturbing thought: could a society truly be noble if it thrived on the suffering of others? The Helot system is a dark stain on the Spartan legacy, and it reminds us that heroism in war often hides cruelty in peace. The real history of Sparta is incomplete without understanding the suffering of the people they enslaved. Sparta's decline came from within. Most people believe that Sparta's fall came at the hands of foreign enemies or a single crushing defeat. But the truth is far less dramatic and much sadder. Sparta's real downfall was caused by its own rigid system and refusal to change with the times. The Spartan population kept shrinking over the years because of constant wars, strict citizenship rules, and the refusal to allow new people into the ranks of full citizens. By the time new powers like Thebes and Macedon rose, Sparta had become a shadow of its former self. The strict Spartan laws that once made it powerful also made it weak in the long run. The elite warrior class became too small to defend its borders. Wealth inequality grew because fewer Spartans controlled more land, and corruption quietly rotted the system from inside. Sparta did not fall in one great battle. It crumbled slowly, fading into irrelevance because it clung too tightly to old ways in a world that was changing fast. Here is a lesson for all of us. Sometimes the greatest threat does not come from enemies outside, but from refusing to adapt and grow. Sparta shows us that a system built on fear and rigid control can only last so long before it breaks apart. Sparta's legacy is more myth than reality today. The image of Sparta has been shaped by movies, legends, and nationalist stories that paint them as perfect warriors. The famous phrase, "Come and take them," supposedly shouted by a Spartan king at Thermopylae, is often quoted by people wanting to show defiance. But much of this legacy is built on half-truths and propaganda. The Spartans were admired even by their enemies, which is why stories about their bravery were exaggerated. Ancient writers like Herodotus and Plutarch loved telling grand tales about Spartans, whether they were true or not. In reality, Sparta was a complex society full of contradictions. It had moments of heroism but also of cruelty and fear. Its warriors were disciplined but not unbeatable. Its society empowered women in some ways but kept others enslaved in brutal conditions. The real Sparta was neither a shining utopia nor a dark tyranny. It was a mixture of both, like most societies in history. And here is a thought worth remembering. History is often written by those with a story to tell, not always by those who lived it. The Spartan myth reminds us to look beyond legends and seek the full picture. Only then can we truly understand the past and learn its lessons. The Spartans were not perfect warriors, nor were they noble heroes untouched by flaws. They were real people in a real world, shaped by fear, ambition, and the harsh demands of survival. They trained hard, fought bravely, ruled harshly, and made mistakes. Their women played roles far larger than most realize. Their slaves bore the weight of their society, and their decline came not from a single defeat, but from the slow decay of their own system. The legend of Sparta will always fascinate us because it speaks to something deep inside: the desire for strength, courage, and the hope of standing firm against the odds. But the truth about the Spartans is even more powerful because it shows what happens when myth meets reality. So next time you hear about the fearless warriors of Sparta, remember this: their real story is not about being perfect, but about being human. And that, perhaps, is the greatest lesson history can teach us. If you found this deeper look into the real Spartans eye-opening, you will want to watch our next video on how World War I created the modern Middle East. See you there.